Oh, you already got your prophylactic.
Just in case, just in case. We're not talking too much budget today, so I didn't bring everybody one. So, good morning. I got a little after 10 o'clock, so I call the meeting to order. And if we can establish a quorum.
Looks like we have everybody but Pete. I'm not
Okay.
sure. I don't see him online.
So everybody else is online.
Everybody else online. So we have 12 out of 13.
All right, thank y'all for your time and efforts to be here. I appreciate it. What we're going to do, because we've got some new members here, it's kind of hard for you folks online to introduce yourself, I guess, but I want to go around the room here and introduce each other. I'm Courtney Fuller. I've been around 482 years. And I'm on the Georgia Trauma Commission, and I chair this committee. I'm a has-been. I used to be the EMS director at Emmanuel Medical Center, Emmanuel County EMS, and I'm currently the public safety coordinator for Emmanuel County, Georgia. So, Lee, I'm gonna get you.
I'm Lee Oliver. I'm the Region 5 rep on the subcommittee.
I'm Huey Atkins, Region 10 rep.
Scott Stevens, and I'm the Region 1 EMS representative.
Brian Hendricks, Region 9.
I'm Jim Adkins. I'm a commission member and I'm from Augusta, Georgia.
Liz?
Nope.
Y'all too.
I'm Gabby. I'm the executive assistant for Georgia Trauma Commission, not an EMS committee member.
Gabby's the one you get a lot of emails from.
It's true.
She is the taskmaster of me too. Liz Atkins, the executive director for the Georgia Trauma Commission, Courtney's keeper. It's a hard job.
How's that work?
It's not working out for me so good, Liz. Anybody on the line?
Do you want me to go
Yeah,
down?
yeah.
So Alan Owens, if you could introduce yourself.
Alan Owens, Region 8.
See John Smith,
John Smith, Region 6, Go Cross EMS.
Jeff Adams,
Jeff Adams, Region 2, Habersham County Emergency Services.
Dwayne Montgomery,
Region 7, Sly County EMS.
Vic Drawdy,
Hey guys, welcome, and I'm Vic Drawdy. I'm the governor's appointee to the Georgia Trauma Commission as well, and sit on this committee. And glad you're here.
and Scott Roberts.
Good morning, Scott Roberts, Region 4, and Fayette County Fire and EMS.
I think that is everybody.
Okay. Gina, you want to start with the group out here?
Sure. Gina Solomon, Director of the Georgia Quality Improvement Program for the Georgia Trauma Commission. Katie Johnson, the Finance Operations Officer for the Georgia Trauma Commission.
She's where you get your money.
Yeah.
She's very important.
I'm Danielle Johnson. I'm the Region 3 RTAC Coordinator. Crystal Shannon, Region 10 RTAC Coordinator.
Tom?
I'm Tim Boone. I'm the AVLS coordinator. Mike Johnson, Director, Office of EMS and Trauma.
Ryan Hunsford, Office of EMS and Trauma, Region 10, Transportation.
Kim Littleton, Executive Director, Georgia EMS Association.
Kathy White, Georgia EMS Association Program Coordinator.
And between them, that's Kim Jr.
Keeper of the building.
Kim's selling puppies today.
Yes, I have somebody that's stationed overseas and he's meeting me here, so I apologize.
She had her dog got a large litter of puppies, so. Okay. And Tom Snyder back there, guys, he's a legend as far as I'm concerned. He was my mentor when I came aboard as an EMS director. He had been ran the University Hospital and then several other ideations of that sort of thing. So thank you all very much for being here. I think the first thing on the agenda, we have 2 sets of minutes. What I'm going to do is ask for a motion to approve both we can discuss both of them. If there's amendments to be made, we will do that. So I'm asking for a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of April 20th and May 19th.
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second it.
Second. All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, so what I'm going to do is ask if there is any body who would vote against approving the minutes, let that be known. Other than that, I will assume that it's approved. I hear no dissension, so I declare that the minutes have been approved. Georgia Trauma Commission update, Liz.
Okay, I'm gonna limit myself to 5 things today and go through them quickly, hopefully. You've heard a lot of talk about the ACS trauma system consult and all of the 80+ findings that were outlined in the report that's on our website. If you haven't looked at it, please do that. In response to that and some of the higher level things that have that were findings at the 09 consult, we've created the Trauma System Executive Leadership Committee. And what that essentially is the dyad leaders between office, DPH and the Georgia Trauma Commission. So it's Dr. Ashley, myself, Xavier Crockett, who's the Health Protection Division Director for DPH, and sometimes April Moss, sometimes Michael Johnson. They kind of switch out depending on what topics we're covering. So one of the things that was a big finding that I think before we get any stakeholder involvement in some of the initiatives that we'll have to start working on is that there was a lot of confusion amongst the stakeholders about who does what. And so we have to clear that up ourselves and develop a very solid crosswalk so that we can, make sure that everybody is crystal clear. So much more, we've done a lot of great work already, and I'm really excited about Dr. Ashley's taken a lot of time out of his schedule, which, he operates on patients, and it's essentially what he does for a living. So we meet in Forsyth, and we've worked through a lot of really challenging things. So I look forward to, by November, we'll probably have a document and draft out there for the stakeholders to look at, because you're the ones that are going to have to say, does this make sense? Does this not make sense? So very exciting. The other thing is that Courtney had mentioned before that in order to support some of much needed EMS research, we were going to do an initial contract with Eileen Bolger, who is a trauma surgeon at UW, a paramedic by background, very interested in all things pre-hospital, has done a lot of work in this space. And we are almost done with that contract. It's actually in AG review right now. So one of the initial projects we're already starting on, I'm working with Kelly on, is mapping where all of the location of all the 911 vehicles are in proximity to the trauma center. So we're working on getting that. We're just trying to get some initial things that may help inform the system and help her sort of help us. So,
Hey Liz, what is that? What is, when you say mapping, what does that mean?
like a GIO mapping, like where is every truck, and then where, and then what are travel times, not just trucks, helicopters too.
Okay.
So
So I'll just use Macon as an example. They're sitting on top of 2 ambulance services, 2 911 providers, sitting on top of a level 1 trauma center. So would it just say 2 services, or would it say 40 ambulances?
So it should have, and this won't be perfect. We brought up a lot of
Sure.
scenarios where Courtney can feel free to interject, but we know that sometimes even where your 911 ambulance is based, sometimes maybe your crew, when they swap shifts or whatever, they might go out and actually stage somewhere because they get closer to where the action is.
Right.
We won't be able to catch that.
Right.
But wherever the truck actually bases out of.
Okay.
So it's not perfect,
Right.
but, and for Macon, it's probably not going to be much utility because you are very close
Right.
to.
Okay.
But as we get further out to the rural areas, it should help kind of elucidate some sort of hot
So
spots.
the database that we're going to use is every year when you do your ambulance license, or whoever does it, you have a base station,
Mhm.
and then you have the supplemental form that says these are our substations. And we recognize, for most of the counties in Georgia, that's where their ambulances are parked, unless they're on a run. For, Metro and probably a lot of others, UNM probably do it too. They'll may have a station, but then they'll say, well, no, we know at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the school gets out, we can probably see a car crash surface. So we won't be able to gather that information. And, we're scratching our heads, eventually maybe we can start gathering some of that information using the ABLS. The goal is to try to look at the time and distance from a particular ambulance station to a level 1 or 2 center. Now, I don't know how many of y'all sent it out. How many of y'all watched the thing about ambulance deserts? And I didn't get it that day, but I went back and looked at it. You can get it online to see the whole presentation. But they were talking about ambulance deserts being someplace that's more than 25 minutes, I think, from an ambulance station. And I actually wrote the lady to get the Georgia data that she talked about, because it was a national thing. They're out of Maine, State Office of Rural Health up there did it. But my concern is that if in a few counties in Georgia, and I'm trying to figure out who and where and how many, you might have an ambulance station 2 miles from the hospital, but if they won't take a critical patient, then I consider that an ambulance desert too. And I asked her about that, and again, she hasn't replied, but she probably got 6 million emails after that nationwide talk, but maybe eventually I'll get something out of her. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at one of the other things. But eventually I'd like to see not only distance, but times put on that same map. There's a lot of templates you could add to that and give us a lot more information.
They're gonna put times.
Oh, good, good. So this is kind of a start. And we've gotten did you talk about the thing with the governor's people? Did you mention that?
They ask. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that.
Okay, all right, now get out your way.
No, you're good, you're good. Yeah, no, I think that, and it doesn't solve anything, obviously, but if we don't start collecting some things to inform the system, we can't really generate solutions. So I'm curious to see. They've done this in a couple other states. The group that's going to help us with that is called the Coalition for National Trauma Research. They're out of San Antonio, Texas, and they've done a lot of great things nationally. So we're looking at some of the other studies that other states have done that they've helped do and replicate across the country. It might be really helpful to us. And Eileen works really closely with them, so it'll be great to get on board. The next thing is, let me go, since Katie has it up, I'll go through this and then I'll pop up the slide on the ask. This is what is the bones of our new trauma system dashboard. And this is the result of a lot of hours of work between myself, Gina, April, and Marie. And Marie Probst from the state office. Some of you might not know her. She's primarily involved in the trauma registry. And this is a combination of a lot of different data sets. So, I'll walk you through it, but there is really not a lot of evidence-based literature out there for us to develop a dashboard on, right? There's not a lot of people doing this. To be honest with you, this is based on essentially a trauma system group that came together at the Trauma Quality Improvement Conference in, I think it was in Dallas back in right before COVID, like 2019. And they had some really, high-powered experts in the room, and they were talking about what are useful things to look at in terms of the health of a system. So one of the things is obviously like how many centers do you have in relation to your population? That way, as the population grows over time, and you can sort of address those needs. Now, within certain geographic areas, there are other methodologies you can use to determine how many trauma centers an area needs to have, and that's a whole other topic, a whole other ball of wax. And we've done some of those analyses and actually published in Georgia, and that's called NBATS, the needs-based assessment for trauma centers. So So this is just, some of these are just raw numbers, so just bear with me, and this is gonna evolve over time, but there's so much work that went into this. Gina we had a lot of sequestration days in the office here in Madison. So we just wanted to unveil it to you to kind of give you a taste of it. And then we're looking at trauma registry patients. So what does that mean? Well, there's no way for me to really explain to you what a trauma registry patient means, because it's like a 2-page list of all the things you have to meet in order to get in the trauma registry. But essentially, the one thing you have to have is you have to have a diagnosis code of a traumatic injury. And then you're either admitted to the hospital, you died, you transferred in, or you transferred out. That's actually it in kind of a nutshell. So that's really the population. And when we start talking about the metrics, we want to kind of look at that a little bit deeper. So then we get into some of the EMS things that we're looking at. And this, I think, would be of particular interest to you folks. We want to look at one of the things that I think we can potentially have some influence over are the EMS scene times. Now, you can't have total influence over scene time because there are a lot of things outside of your control, scene safety, extrication, things like that. But if we're not looking at it, we can't do anything about it. And now I'll show you in a minute, but one of the biggest things that goes into this is, or that makes this so critical, is definitions, right? Because there's a lot of different ways to define scene time. It's what time did the truck get on the scene? What time did we get to the patient? For purposes of this, we're talking specifically about what time you arrived on scene and what time you left on scene. Now, what time you left the patient or whatever. So this is the entirety of that. Now, we tried to look wherever we could. We wanted to use, again, evidence-based, like what is best practice here, right? Now, the SEMSO published some really useful guidelines in general for EMS just a couple years ago. And I think for the most critical trauma patients, they published that the goal for that should be less than 10 minutes or less. So 10 minutes is kind of tight, and we don't look at just critical patients. This is all trauma patients. So we're using 20 for right now. We think we might be able to drill down on the critical patients just by using ISS, because that's how trauma patients are characterized as critical or not. So potentially we're going to further drill down into this to look at those that are ISS 16 or greater, and then use that 10 minutes. And then maybe the whole goal with this is that now that we have this huge database, we can actually drill down on those actual patients that were there less than 10 or greater than 10 minutes. And then that can be a method to have a conversation between the EMS service and the trauma center to say, what are their circumstances outside your control? Was it a scene safety issue? Was it a prolonged extrication? What happened? What happened? Was it appropriate or not? So just some little starting point about how we can kind of look at what we're doing here. And then we go into things like mortality, and this is really just looking at gross mortality. We have in fact, Gina's whole life is based around risk-adjusted mortality and complications. So we have a much finer way to look at that. But this is, again, when you start building it year over year and you start looking at trends, that's where the meat lies, right? That's where the utility really comes from. And then perhaps one of the most important things to look at is in those injury severity score, the highest ones, the most critical patients where they're greater than 15 or 16 or higher, were they treated at a level 1 or 2 trauma center? And it's not going to be every single one, right? Injury severity score isn't a perfect science, but again, this is a way to just kind of look at it and say, what % of those are getting to the centers that they need to get?
Is that on the initial transport or on this?
So that's a really good question. We're going to go back.
Sorry.
Well, no, thank you.
And actually I have, and I haven't updated Liz on this, but I did. So you have to take them out. So in the trauma registry data. Because the way the data is set up, so if a patient was in a 3 and 4 and got transferred to a 1 or 2, that registry patient is gonna be in the 3 and 4's trauma registry, but it's also gonna show up again in the level 1 and 2's trauma registry. It's gonna be in both places. So you gotta take them out of the 1 and 2 registry, and then you kind of put them back in. So I did that like at a high level.
Right.
And then, so if you take them out and then kind of put them back in, those that were transferred to a 1 and 2, then it looks like about 97%. Even if they went to a 3 and 4, then got transferred to a 1 and 2, if you look at it that way, 97% wind up.
So, and I don't want to pick it apart. I'm just trying to understand it. Looking at that line, does that mean that roughly 95% of all the patients in Georgia that are classified as a trauma patient are making it to a 1 or 2?
Are you talking about the 95? Sorry, because in this version, you can't see the
Right
lines.
here. The 15 treated.
Greater than 15.
Yes, greater than 15 treated at level 1 or 2.
Does that mean they're getting to the right
Yes,
spot at the right
yes,
time, the
yeah.
first time?
Not necessarily the first time. 'Cause the
Okay, that's where you were saying,
Yes.
okay.
And not
So, but
necessarily
it's-
at the right time,
Excuse me?
and not necessarily in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Okay, but so
There's
it is higher than I thought. I mean, I don't know what I thought it would have been. That's a high number.
Right, and so if we can put the time piece to it, then
Right.
now we're really gonna have a story. Because right now, we only have 25% of that data, and we know it takes 5 hours on average, right? So we gotta drill down into that a little bit further. And then not related necessarily to the ones above, but the over and the triage rates that you see below those, that's really based on whatever the trauma center's activation criteria were for their top tier or second tier. So how well are they hitting it on the mark? And for trauma centers, we want that around 5%, but that's very pie in the sky. It's really hard to do that without having, they're much better. So over triage is like, you know, we threw the kitchen sink at them and they didn't need it essentially. You know, we'd rather have a higher over triage rate than an under triage rate. But to be honest with you, those look better than what I really thought they would. And then you can see the time to definitive care that will, the double transfer is a little hard for us to find right now, but that's something that we need to look at too. And the reason that's important is because that prolongs that time to definitive care, right? So if a patient showed up at, say, a level 4, and, you know, sometimes what you see, where this happens in systems where it's problematic, this is usually what happens. They transfer to a hospital in the same healthcare system that might be a level 3, and then level 3 goes, oh shoot, we can't handle this here, so we got to transfer it out again. So it goes to a level 1 or 2 potentially outside the system. So we don't want to, if the patient has to go somewhere, we want them to get to the place where they need to go to have the right level of resource, if that makes sense. And then the time to definitive care, S group is the ditch to the door from, you know, from the scene. The R group is they go to a referring facility first, and that's the group that we don't have a lot of data out of yet that we're hoping to get more. And then we also don't have trauma diversion data, but that's on our list because that's something we want to get to be able, because if the trauma centers are closed and can't accept patients, that doesn't really help us, right? We have to figure out some way to monitor that. And then we wanted to do some sort of like data submission compliance, because the trauma centers are held to a data submission compliance. So I guess I need, you know, your help, and certainly our colleagues at Office of EMS and Trauma to kind of share some sort of system-wide help of like, are people submitting their data on that?
They're already monitoring that.
Okay. So we'll be able to get that from them, it sounds like.
Couple of quick questions.
Yeah.
Are y'all, what's y'all's hospital? Y'all level 4?
4.
Okay. I'm trying, give me somebody that's not a level 4. I don't care.
Candler County.
The Candler County, okay.
You mean a non-trauma center?
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
okay.
trauma patient gets dropped off, not by EMS,
Yeah.
drops off at Candler County. All right, then they stabilize and they transfer to Savannah, wherever they're going. Is that patient included in there at all?
If they're transferring to a trauma center, they will be, but that's where I said, when you get down below the part where it's registry,
Right.
Like I can't, and these registry non-designated, there's a couple centers who aren't trauma centers, but they actually are collecting registry data.
Right.
Bless their hearts. So we have data on them, but if you're not in that registry group, I can't get all this other information.
Well, that's the reason I was asking, because I was wondering if they were counted, then their scene time's not counted on that call, right?
Correct.
That's excluded.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on the medium EMS time.
But if they got transferred to a trauma center, they would be included in this, because then we would go back, because they'd have a referring hospital. Because then we would go back and find the first ditch to the first door,
Right.
and then door 1 to door 2.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, and I guess I know it's a low percentage compared to this larger number.
Yeah.
Especially with the number that are making it to 1 or 2 initially.
yeah,
But if you had a transfer in Canada, like you said, crew gets there, patient crashes, it takes them an hour to stabilize.
yeah.
You wouldn't want that in your scene time. But it's, y'all
Oh, right, right,
are
right.
excluding that, so it's
So-
not part of it.
Yeah, right, but you bring up a really good point, and Jim Dunn, trauma surgeon, medical director from Savannah Memorial, he brought this up on the call too, on the data committee call. Because he said, well, these are things that, like, there are always gonna be things that happen.
Sure.
But if we don't establish, and like, I need your help for this, if we don't
Right.
establish like some threshold, because what the threshold should do is initiate, and you for your accreditation, do you not have like filters, audit filters you have to look at, like intubation success rate? Like scene time is probably, do you look at that for accreditation? Yeah. So it should be a threshold, and that should initiate the conversation between the trauma center and the EMS entity to say, would you be surprised how many times it really doesn't, and you don't get any feedback.
So on the medium EMS scene time, that's just for trauma patients, right? About 5 from the top.
We did all EMS, because we wanted to see where is everybody. So April pulled this from biospatial, Michael, I think. And then we looked at.
And so is that
So we did it 3 ways. One is everybody, so all comers,
for
all
911?
EMS.
Just 911.
Just 911,
911 scene calls, time on scene. Is that what
Correct.
that is? Okay.
correct. Then this is, if in the EPCR, if you checked off trauma. So
Okay,
this
that's
could
the
be
subject.
more, that
Okay.
could be more, yeah, because we wanted to know, what does this mean in relation to everybody? And this is registry only, so the patients who get put in the registry.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Highest
And
number.
hopefully with the launch of our metrics, what we want to do is try to push some data out regionally so that there can be some regional PI on some of this. And we can look.
Now is the armband project, is it helping this?
Kelly's not here today. Do you want to talk? Yeah.
Too early, we gotta not get any data.
Okay. Is it running?
It is running.
Okay, that's
It's been running
region
since-
1? No,
Since
region,
the last of April,
what region is that?
region 2.
Region 2. Okay.
Well, 2 counties in region 2, not
Okay.
the whole region.
Okay.
So does everybody think it's reasonable to use 20 minutes for like all comers for trauma? And then if we can drill down into the critical ISS 16 or greater to see what that's doing, we could add that as another, we could add it median EMS scene time. And we're using median, not average, because if somebody was on scene for 3 hours waiting for a helicopter or something, like that's gonna pollute that, right?
Let's
So
hope they don't
median-
do that.
They do.
They do.
They do.
It happens. Gina, does it happen? Yes, it happens. These are things we gotta look at. So we'll break out the critical patients and see if we can figure anything. Katie, can you scroll? Because I think she put the, yeah, so right here, this is, we wanted to keep a log of the source of truth for each data element. And you can see, in some things it's consistent, but other things, like we're switching over. Office of EMS and Trauma is using image trend. It's just a difference in vendors. So we have a lot of checks and balances to make sure that everything we're getting is really the same. But we want to make sure that moving forward, we know and we're tracking what the data source is. And if you can go up one more time, I think the hardest work on this is on the next sheet. Yes, and this is definition. So we want to keep a definition page so that whenever somebody says, well, what are you counting as EMS scene time? Is it time arrived on scene or time to the patient? So we can say, here's all the definitions, right or wrong, if you agree with them or not. At least we want to spell them out so that folks know. So send me feedback via email if you have any feedback on
As
this.
you go through, will y'all be able to break it out by region, public health
Gina,
district, something like that?
Gina's gonna be the queen of all data breakout.
Yes, and some of the data, like with my data, I already have some reports. I can break data
Right.
out by region, by county of entry. So that's how
Right.
I broke it down. So I've gotten
Because
queries.
each
filled.
region's got its unique challenges. I mean, some
Yes.
regions you have distance,
Yes.
and some regions you have traffic.
So I
And
built
they can
my-
all equal 18 minutes,
Yeah,
but
by
they have
county
their
of
unique
entry.
differences.
And I
yeah.
did, actually for, Region 10 was my guinea pig. Only because,
That's where we are.
I know the demographics there, I live there. It was easy for me to do, and so I did some initial work with, doing some of those things with Region 10. So, and they had some really good feedback and questions. It is a lot of work, to do, to pull all of that. But with the arborometric stuff, they will have filters built in that by region. I have a meeting with them today and we were talking about some of that. So one of the metrics in the arborometrics platform is going to be the time to care. So if we have the data, if we have all the EMS data in there, we can break it down by region because that will be built in that platform. So I'm excited to see what that may look like.
Okay, two other quick updates. One is, before the ask, one is that the RTech coordinators this year in their contracts, they are required to collaborate with the regional partners to determine an trauma educational needs assessment. So, and that along with our mapping and the great work that Gems is doing with all EMS education, that should help inform us. So just make sure whoever your RTech chair is, it probably sits on your EMS council, and your RTech coordinator are all working together to make sure we're characterizing what each region's needs are, because it's a deliverable for them. So I want them to be successful in that. So each of you, as your regional EMS rep, between you, your RTech chair, your EMS council, and your RTech coordinator, let's come up with what each region's needs are, as well as we'll see the mapping. We should have that later, probably by your next meeting. And then the last thing is Dr. Ashley, I think I mentioned it to you guys at the last meeting. He had a talk with the commission members at the March 1st meeting, talking about it's time to potentially, especially because this came out of the ACS system console visit as well, it's time to potentially ask for some more money. So on the trauma center, this is where we need your help with the EMS ask, but on the trauma center side, there's like 40 slides here and I don't have time to go through all of it, but I wanted to show you guys a couple snapshots that the trauma centers are funded in two major buckets. One is trauma readiness. And by the way, the code that established the commission, both trauma centers and EMS are supposed to be funded some mechanism for readiness and uncompensated care. Now we do this differently and it's very, very detailed for the trauma centers. So we used to do uncompensated care for EMS. I think that got a little problematic. Courtney, you probably have a lot more history on that. So we do funding for EMS in different ways now, but anyway, for the trauma centers, we kind of looked at this because the good news is that we have data going back from 2007. And we've done several trauma center readiness studies now. So you can see the top line there is the readiness costs, and where you see the line kind of do this and kind of go up is where we've done subsequent surveys to get. And so that process has gotten much tighter over the years, and obviously costs are increasing, but you can see the orange line on the bottom is funding. So funding is flat and decreasing. And then you guys remember me mentioning back in the fall, for the very first time, we actually had a level 3-4 readiness cost survey, and they're woefully underfunded as well. So, so this chart kind of depicts the percent of funding. So somewhere around 6 to 7% all in when you take all levels of trauma center, and that's like cents on the dollar. So Dr. Ashley Courtney has heard this over and over again. His battle cry is 7 cents on the dollar. It's the biggest bang for your buck. But I think where it really goes off the rails, although this isn't really very popular to talk about up on the Hill, is that when it comes to uncompensated care, we're talking a much different picture here, and it's much higher. It's a lot more money. So uncompensated care, I'll just flip to the money slide here. I think this is a better one. So what this shows you is that from the last 2 fiscal years that we have a very tight uncompensated care process for the trauma centers. They submit the number of patients that they got no payment on. If the patient paid $1, doesn't qualify. And we have a third-party auditor that goes in the building and checks every single patient against the registry. Well, actually, they do a sampling, but often the sample comes back with issues, so they follow up on it. The actual charges submitted, this is some new information that we just started, and I'm so glad we collected it. For this past year, the trauma centers actual charges, and we know the hospital's overcharged, so just, you know, almost $668,000 worth of $660 million worth of uncompensated care charges. We have a process where we wash all that out, and we're kind of like CMS. We say, great with your $659 million, but we are going to potentially consider 70 million of that because we use cost norms and CMS payment rates, et cetera. And so then, but then when you come down to what's actually available out of the commission budget, it's just under 7 million that's available. So to their actual charges, they get about 1%. And to what we allow, they get about 10%. So when you look at this in the grand scheme of things, you take the readiness and the uncompensated care, it's really about 783 million if you take the actual charges. But if you take the allowable charges of the 70 million, like I said, that's being really conservative. The total cost of the system is about $194 million. So what Dr. Ashley and I and several of the hospital's government affairs folks and some GHA folks, what we thought might be reasonable to ask for is to say, you know, uncompensated care, again, it's not, you know, it goes along the line of Medicaid expansion. They don't really want to talk about giving hospitals money to take care of people that can't fund themselves or don't have any other source of funding. So let's take that out of the equation. Let's use readiness because we have an established methodology. It's been published 4 times now. And let's take that and say, you know, here's the average cost by the center level of readiness costs. And let's say, let's bring them up to just 50% of what the readiness costs should be. Now, level 4s are a little bit different story because the data we collected on them showed that their costs were only 81,000. And I doubt that's true. So we're going to have to help them and repeat that study and get better numbers on that. So we decided they would be left intact and funded at 81,000. And whatever costs to do that, we need to do that because their 81,000 price is not enough. So the price tag for that would be about $61 million. So it's probably not going to be on this legislative docket because we have a lot more groundwork to lay before that happens. But I wanted to give you guys a flavor for that. And that's why I think the work that we're potentially doing, and Courtney, we don't really have time to go into it now, but the work that UGA may be doing for us, we can start putting together an economic story for EMS so we can add EMS to that picture, right? Right now, we don't have data. I didn't know until recently, Huey told me, I didn't even realize you guys only get paid per mile, right? And so you could do the works for a trauma patient and blow out 3 liters of fluid, whatever you're doing, or, you know, expend a bunch of EZIOs or something like that, and those needles aren't cheap, but you're gonna get the same rate, whether you did that or whether you just held their hand from the scene to the hospital, right? So,
There's a distinct financial disadvantage of providing quality care in this world. A very distinct. If you can't get CMS to understand that.
so we need to kind of have those discussions.
Do they ever figure out what the, how much money is generated with the tire disposal fee that you pay on every tire you purchase?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
actually the one that,
That was one of the big reasons they passed that
Yeah, we
bill
got
a
the
year or
trust
so
fund.
ago. That helped us was the tire disposal bill. Every time you just get rid of a tire, they charge you $1. And my brother's in the tire business, so I know a little, I hear him grapple about that all the time, but now that money's actually going back and being used for what it's supposed to be used for.
Well, I was just wondering for funding, if they added $1 for every tire, so that covers all your, I mean, that's automobile, ATVs, boats, they move around on trailers. I mean, anything trauma related is gonna have a tire involved somewhere. And that would be a good way to generate additional revenue.
I think, in all honesty, I think it would be easier going back to the car tag. And the reason I say that is if you
The
want to
car
hit,
tag didn't generate that kind of money.
it generated $80 million. So that's similar to that, but here's the deal. You go to Capitol and say, we're going to charge on tires. And you got about 9 different lobbyists that represent either tire companies or companies like my brother that sells tires. And they're going to say, what in the hell has that got to do with
But
tires?
that doesn't come out of their fund.
Trust
yeah, they do, and.
I've been there in them
No, I
committee
know,
hearings.
I know, but I'm
Yeah,
just, you know.
we need to, that's why I say this is not likely to come forward this year, because number one, we need the governor around this, that we need more money, and since the pandemic really monopolized the first part of his first term, that we really haven't gotten, we don't have the same level of connection to previous administration, so we'll work on that piece first, make sure that there's an understanding of the necessity of this. In the meanwhile, work on the EMS story to figure out if we can compile some data that we need a price tag, kind of like that. We need to crunch some numbers. Dr. Ashley and I were in my office for 12 hours that day, just going through all the numbers and different scenarios and stuff. So, and then, working behind the scenes again with more hospital government affairs folks and GHA folks to say, like, what is realistic here, what's reasonable.
Have any of y'all gone through the CMS collection on cost yet? CMS has got a program going on now where they're asking the services to tell them how much it costs to do business. And this was rolled out before COVID, because I did a talk to the ACCG group about it. My big fear is that a lot of services won't capture all the cost. For instance, most services don't consider 911 dispatchers as a cost of EMS. But if 30% of the 911 business is dispatching EMS, then 30% of that cost ought to be allocated to the EMS work. If you're a county shop and you get your maintenance done by the county shop, my budget did get charged simply for the parts. The county shop budget picked up the labor and all of that sort of thing, and overhead for the building, the lights, and all that sort of thing. All of that is a cost to running an EMS. And my fear is that these counties would just say, here's our budget, and this is what it is. Well, if their budget doesn't include all of those support costs, then CMS is going to get the idea that it doesn't cost much to run an EMS. And that's what they're doing, is trying to use this to base their reimbursement to EMS. Okay. So the Trauma Commission talks about readiness costs, and I can't figure out the difference, if there is a difference between a readiness cost and a fixed cost. Okay. So some of you who took economics in college, there's a fixed cost and a marginal cost, and those together make your total cost. All right. So fixed cost means that's what you got, you gotta have that, you gotta spend that money no matter if you run a call or not. Marginal cost, if you run a call, then that's the fuel and any supplies that you use. So most of the cost of EMS, the vast majority cost of EMS is fixed cost. And particularly, I feel in these rural shops where the low volume is there, they've got that fairly large fixed cost, very small marginal cost. But the bottom line is that marginal cost is what brings in the revenue. So it makes it very difficult to work through all those processes. So if you know anybody who's gone through that process, I'd love to come talk to them and find out what all they put into their report. Any other questions for Liz? Jim?
Okay. So end of fourth quarter, year end for the ABLS system. Let me just apologize to start out here. I'm having hearing technology problems. Too many years close to the large explosions. And now the technology that's in my ears is about worn out. We got new ones coming next week. And right now they work and then they don't work. So I say, what? That's what's going on. All right, so next slide, please. The support deliverables in terms of activity with the agencies during this quarter were nothing remarkable. The major thing that took a lot of time was we were in the final stages of the slow supply chain and slow in getting equipment. Now we're up to speed. We can get equipment in a week or less, and so on. But we spent a lot of time chasing things down and tracking and making sure it was getting where it was going, and so on. And still trying to talk to some of the agencies that are not using the system or not using it to full capability yet, and work on that. So those are the kinds of examples of some of the kinds of things that we were doing there. And the next slide continues that some more with some of those. And then here we have our situation. We got about 1,135 total active 911 ambulances with gateways in and out there. 14 out of 1,443 that are actually installed on the system. And so that 1,135 is 79% of that. That's what's running, and that's dropped in this quarter. It dropped to about 1%. Community ambulance has increased their rates, and everybody else is pretty much I've been putting the arrows by anybody up or down over there on the right side of the columns. So basically, each other regions have stayed about where the same as they were in the previous quarter in terms of rates. Now within that, there are some changes because in Region 3, Clayton County is withdrawing from the system, and so there's 28 units that are dropped that were dropped down in Region 3. Grady is also going with a different system. And about close to 100 of their units across the state have dropped out. We still have about 50 some that are on our system. Clayton County has bought out of their own funds Cradle Point system for their entire fire department, including all their EMS and so on, I guess. And using Verizon through Verizon. And Grady is using a system that they've got a telemetry system that's basically a Wi-Fi unit that they're put like a Wi-Fi hotspot that they're putting in their ambulances, and they think it's going to work. Sierra Wireless is working closely to make sure to see whether it will or not. We've been down this road with them a few times over the last 10 years, 12 years. So we don't know exactly how that's going to work out, but one of the things that happens is we work through the EMS side of the house and with the EMS directors. And then sometimes in these agencies, and especially some of the, not necessarily biggest, but some large enough that they have IT departments, the IT department all of a sudden discovers that we have this equipment in the ambulances, and the IT department gets in there and starts making IT decisions without knowledge about what's going on with the EMS system in the world, and they don't talk to each other. So we're trying to remedy that by talking to more of them. It is helpful talking with the RTACs and the regional directors, and they know a little more about what the rumor mill is than I do, and they can help me talk to people, and we can talk about the technology and help them see what the advantages and disadvantages of the various decisions that they might make are. But nonetheless, it's there. And the biggest problem with our uptime is simply agencies like, for example, one of the units in Region 4 is got units. They're sitting there, but they haven't been installed yet. And so, and they have a hard time getting their trucks off the road and getting them installed with the equipment. So that's and that has to do with, they don't have their own IT people to do the installation. They have, so they're depending on an outside shop and whatever other reasons they might have. But that's what in essence happens most of the time that results in these lower percentages of active time. There's a PDF that you've all received. It's a spreadsheet, 40-some pages long. It's got the detail behind these numbers. If you want to look by region, by agency, and see the actual units and how many are up and down in each case, you can see that. It's what I used to know how I'm going to spend my time talking to who. Okay. The counties without AVLS right now: Cherokee, Kim, Chattahoochee, Muskogee area, Buchanan, Gwinnett, Long, Lumpkin, and now, of course, we're going to have to add our folks from Clayton County to that list this quarter. But as of last quarter, this is where we stood at the end of the year. And latest edition, June 30th of this year, we put together a quick reference guide update with the latest information, and sort of at the end of the year, before and after, with Katie and Gabby's help, we've got a page, an AVLS page on the Trauma Commission website now that has all the reference material, links, an overview of what the program's about, and so on and so forth. And so this reference guide, as well as the links to the orientation videos and stuff, are on that site. So anybody can access that information, and we can point them to those to access them easily. Airtime, Verizon's down to 413 units. They've lost a lot of units to Southern Link in this last year. Southern Link, in their footprint, seems to be offering very good service that everybody likes, feel comfortable with. That's the good news. The bad news is that Southern Link is the most expensive of the options, or as expensive, but one of the most expensive. It's about $10 more than T-Mobile. Verizon has gone down. AT&T has gotten 168 units, and they've not gone any further. They've been sitting there. They haven't made any further inroads. And so that's where, and Verizon is as I said, they've been coming down as well. So I'm quite sure T-Mobile is being very aggressive. They've made a proposal to us that they're willing to give us 90 days of SIMs. They're going to give us a couple hundred SIMs that we can pass out to whichever agencies want to try it. They can put T-Mobile SIMs in their gateways and use them for up to 90 days. And if they choose not to continue to use it, go back to whatever it was they were, that they will make that happen, and there will be no charge for that for up to 90 days of that time. So they're saying here, you know, it's the take this little puppy home and just for overnight, you know, and you can bring it back. Don't close there, but it's a good opportunity for us to try the T-Mobile capability in the various parts of the state where they, and they're very strong. They've become, their network has increased and has become much stronger. And in terms of 5G, they're much stronger than Verizon Wireless. But let me explain that what we do with these ambulances, 5G is really irrelevant. 4G for the foreseeable future is all we ever need. It's just not going to be a 5G world for us that we need to worry about that expense in doing that, wherever it may be. The capability, what we do with the ambulance and the use cases we have in the ambulances don't come close to overwhelming the 4G capability. And one other little piece of information I'll just pass out to everybody. There's some talk going around that Cradle Point to the sales world, right? That Cradle Point, well, if an ambulance and a fire truck and a police car, all, you know, or multiple ones all show up in the same general area for an incident, it immediately creates a Wi-Fi mesh, and then that gives us the capability to do this all kinds of Wi-Fi around it. Well, that's not exactly what happens. What happens is they end up with one SSID, and everybody calls into that same SSID. And that's fine if you have 5 or 10. But if you're around the stadium or whatever, and there's a whole bunch of people calling there, it can still be a problem. The units that we have, the MG9s that we have right now, will do all of that. Everything that the Cradle Point system will do, and then some. Okay? So if there is no technical capability improvement by going to Cradle Point, no matter what anybody says, when you look at the actual specifications and look at what actually works, that's the case. Problem is that people have them in police cars, and they work fine in that use case, but they don't, that's a different use case than an ambulance. And so they're overgeneralizations. Okay. Any questions on that?
How would you go about getting the trial? I mean, it seems like something we should try to push, right? Because it would save
a bunch of money.
A bunch of money,
yes. Yeah, I would recommend it. I think we can, if you slide that back up to where we were looking at how much units there. It's possible that T-Mobile could take over 150 maybe of those Verizon units. And that's $10 a pop per month savings. I'm not quite sure on the AT&T. I wouldn't be surprised if they couldn't get most of those, because I think their coverage is better than AT&T.
So these our devices, you can put more than one card.
You can, yes.
Is there a way to track which card is being utilized the majority of the time?
There is. In fact, one of the things we're talking with at Sierra, we're going to run a test using that new equipment that we looked at last time at the last meeting in Metro and Habersham and Emmanuel County, and we're going to do that. We're going to run try and see if we can run them simultaneously. And if that could cause some operational 911 issues, dispatch issues. If it does, then we say, we'll run this one for a month and then run this one for a month and on those tests and see. And then if that looks good, then we can come back and say, you might want to try this on a lot of your trucks. And T-Mobile is definitely aggressively wanting to support that. They'd like to get a much bigger percentage of what we're doing.
I just know my experience with them in the past was T-Mobile was great in the urban areas, but when you get away from that,
Yeah,
the service level really dropped off.
It's
I don't know, it's really, it's good in our, it's better in our county than AT&T, which is shocking. I didn't know that. I mean, they must be expanding.
Oh, they've been expanding like incredible. They have by far clearly the best 5G network in the country, all over the country, in rural as well as whatever, in terms of their coverage. And their speed, their download speed is much higher than anybody else's in that technically in their network. So that's there. And in the state of Georgia, they've just been putting up sites all over there. They've gotten to the point where you can put cellular Wi-Fi or cellular internet in your home and run your home on wireless, as opposed to having to have a cable come in from Comcast or AT&T or whatever. And it's as good as you can get from AT&T, not quite as good as you can get from Comcast by cable yet, but getting there.
So I guess if anybody's interested in checking it, they got 4 months before the open enrollment comes up.
We can
try it out.
Because it's not a cost to us, we can go ahead and do that because T-Mobile, anybody's interested.
That's what I'm saying. People have
Yeah.
4 months to try it out, see if they're interested in switching, and by then it's open enrollment.
Yeah, we can go.
But it's not, folks, I mean, think about it, that's over, if we just got that T-Mobile price for everybody, you know, we're saving probably $125,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
You know what I think one of the challenges is going to be is it seems like when you think about the evolution of this, every one of those names has been at the top of the list at some point.
Yeah.
As the best one. And so I agree, Courtney, 6-figure change, but somebody that's got 6 trucks, I'm thinking about changing if we changed our fleet, it's a challenge.
Just because of the number of
Physically
vehicles.
a challenge.
Yeah, logistically.
Well, I think when it comes time to negotiate with Southern Link, I don't know. Well, you're fixing to start losing some folks because your rates are too high, and maybe we can negotiate with them.
Well, that's true too. We may use the pressure to bring some rates down. But the other side is T-Mobile is willing to put a team in the field to go to where your ambulance is in the field and switch it. It only takes 5 minutes. Once you get to the truck, it only takes 5 minutes to switch the SIM. The problem is getting to the truck, right? And when you're scheduling a big fleet. So T-Mobile's willing to facilitate that and do some of that work.
I'm amazed how many goes went to Southern Link and AT&T is the first step.
I'm sorry?
It just amazed me how many people moved from Southern to Southern Link. I don't care. It just amazed me how many people are on services on Southern Link.
And the coverage is not that good.
And
with Southern
AT&T
Link.
is the nationwide FirstNet coverage. So.
Well, Southern Link jumped into 5G too quick. And their previous system that everybody used, which was pretty good, it literally crashed on us. I mean, we were forced to change. It got so bad. But now they've kind of got back up to speed, and what they're offering seems to be pretty good.
Was it Southern Link?
Southern Link.
Southern Link's got a solid 4G system now. It's very solid, and it's going to be there for a while. And where they have coverage, where their footprint is, that nobody has anything better. I mean, just comparatively, nothing better coverage. Where the problem is, they don't cover the whole state. We did get them to, we negotiated them out of the 2 GB limit, so they've given us unlimited for free, which is better than what it was, but it makes things life a lot easier in terms of managing the bills. So they don't have to change it every month by reducing the overages. So we've got it there, but it's still $40 a month as opposed to $30 a month, which you get with T-Mobile.
Are you, just real quick, are you seeing any antenna failures? I've got another one. I'm just gonna have to.
Yeah, we've had 2 or 3 failures a quarter. So it's not a big number, but it's been a few, and it comes from wiring not having ground where the wires pass through metal with trucks. They haven't been properly, they don't have a good grommet around them or something, and it rubs it and shorts it out. Sometimes the antennas get wet somehow, water gets in them, the variety of things. But it hasn't been, it's not that big. Okay, and then the budget last year, 134,348. We spent of 134,884. So we had $536 left at the end of the year. That worked out pretty well. We didn't have to tell anybody they had to wait for equipment because of funding, and we didn't have, it wasn't over. It worked out. Came out pretty well on target. We just started spending a little bit of our money for this year for some units for Butts County. Get some of the trucks. All right.
Any other questions for Tim? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Kim, you ready? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, everybody. Go through a couple of things on our 23 report. You'll see we've actually broken down all of the courses that we have in our partnership on the education grants. We have, Kathy has some software that she's been using to track where all of our participants are coming from, the number of classes that we have. Leadership program, all of you familiar with it, the 4 one-week modules throughout the year. We have had 24 students in the prior class, and now we have 3,840 contact hours. You'll see on each one of these that we are listing out the number of students and the contact hours for each one of these courses. Trauma Skills Lab, 10 trauma skills labs that were conducted in fiscal year 23, 1,400 and I believe that's 62 students, 5,000, I'm sorry, I can't see it. 5,848 contact hours. And some of these, I'll just go ahead and give you a little information as we're going into the next fiscal year. With the Trauma Skills Lab, we have all of the Trauma Skills Labs placed for the FY24 round of money, except for Region 9 and Region 4. We're still working on the placement for those, but all of the other regions are selected for the Trauma Skills Lab. EMR EMT program. 49 EMR EMT courses were completed with 648 students and 162,000 contact hours. With this program, I think some of you are familiar, but as we get those courses that have been awarded, sometimes we have services that are not able to complete those courses. If we find out that they're not able to do a course for whatever reason, we immediately go back into our list and pull out the next one on the list that may have not been funded, or that may have in the lag time between may have actually applied after the original date. So we were able to actually award all of the EMR EMT course applications that we received in the last fiscal year. And an update on for the 24 EMR EMT program, we have awarded all of those grants for the upcoming fiscal year on those grants as well. Auto extrication, we conducted 4 courses, and remember that this course actually has an emphasis with patient care. Most all of you have gone through some level of extrication, but you'll remember we were doing a lot of cutting up cars, but not very much focus on what's going on with the patient inside that vehicle. So this is very heavily weighted on the patient care during an extrication. 4 courses, 113 students, 2,712 contact hours. EMS instructor preparedness. We had 2 courses, 32 students completing those courses, 1,280 contact hours. And we do have, I think, 2 more those classes that are scheduled in this upcoming fiscal year. Accidents leadership completed one course for 30 students and 600 contact hours. And then the NA&T courses, we are in the process now. We started the application process for the FY24 NA&T courses. Still have some of those coming in, but during last fiscal year, we completed 25 of those courses, 361 students and 5,664 contact hours. And most all of you remember that this can be anything from AMLS, EPC, any of the trauma courses. So now they don't actually have to let us know what course they're doing. They are just applying for a trauma course and they select what is the most needed for their service. Tactical emergency casualty care, we completed 13 courses, 223 students, 3,568 contact hours. In this one, I know that they're getting a little bit more spread out with some of these. I'm actually working with NA&T right now on something because some of you that deal with NA&T, you may remember a couple of years ago, they went to a system where you could no longer use mobile site codes. You had to actually have a training center site code for every location that you went into. It makes sense for some of the services that were doing their in-house training or that were doing it within the service because they wanted to guarantee that they had the appropriate equipment and the training center was actually set up to complete the best level course under the NA&T guidelines. For some of the courses that we do, it really doesn't make sense because we are literally taking in all of the equipment and we're providing the cadred instructors. So the site itself doesn't have to prepare anything except for making sure that we have a facility to hold the course. So I'm working with NA&T now to see if there might be a workaround on some of these that we don't physically have to get a training center site code for each one of these, because in many of these areas, it's in some very rural areas that we may only be going there to do one course. And it's a lot of legwork, a lot of paperwork to be done to set that up. So we're seeing if we're able to work that out with NA&T, and I'll keep y'all updated on that. We have also already assigned the TECC courses through December. We already have placement for those and have the others that are in the works for the remainder of those in that budget. Farm medic course, all of you know that this is a program that's actually been developed and curriculum devised within the association. We conducted 13 of these courses, 212 students, 3,392 contact hours. We do get a lot of calls about this course from other states. We've been asked to go to North Dakota. There's evidently not this kind of training out there readily available, so we do get a lot of questions and a lot of requests for this class. It's done very well. And then this is just a total sheet that you'll see from all of our education funding. And what we had over this last fiscal year, 3,123 students for a total of 189,048 contact hours.
Wow.
Anyone have any questions about our trauma?
Very good.
Okay. All right, some of you, I think in the next slide that we go into, y'all have the video loaded.
There's a video link on that video.
I think all of you will remember we had in FY23 we had funding for the development of a public service announcement video focusing on recruitment and retention, and we as part of that we worked with a video company that was actually housed in Central Georgia. And Liz had sent me an email, and I totally agree with what she was saying, that if you see the video, you'll see that there's some things in there that we're going to need to tweak a little bit. She had made a comment about needing to add the Trauma Commission logo, which we already knew that we needed to do a cover piece and an end piece with those logos and wording on there. So that was going to be done. It's also, she brought up that there was a lot of air medical on there, a lot of air evac that was actually focused on this. One of the reasons for that is, again, we were using a company that's based in Middle Georgia for the limited amount of funding that we had for the development of PSA. We were trying to work locally, getting as many services included in it, but not having to pay hotel and per diem for the video crew to go into a lot of these areas. But we're looking at going back with the company and editing this, whether we either incorporate more
ground ambulance footage in there are also slowing down the transition time. You'll see when we go through this that it changes very quickly from one session to the next. So we're trying to get within for a few more edits on this, but that's basically the general point of this PSA. So go ahead and y'all run that now.
Want to be successful?
I don't know yet, but I know I want to make an impact.
Join a dynamic, flexible, and rewarding career field that offers education and training, guaranteed job placement, competitive benefits and pay, and advancement opportunities. A career with Georgia EMS is more than just a job. It's an important role that allows you to help others and save lives. It's a calling to commitment and service to your community. It's an opportunity to be part of a greater network of healthcare professionals. It's a chance for you to grow and reach your potential. There are immediate educational programs and jobs to fill statewide. Explore programs, view job openings, or connect with EMS providers at georgiaemsassociation.com/EMS. Pursue your purpose and start your journey today with the Georgia EMS Association.
So the idea behind this as well, and you also received information in the packet that was sent out for this meeting. We'll talk about that in a minute, is the marketing package that we're looking at of actually pushing this out. But one of the things that we are trying to do is we're trying to, in that link at the end of this video, is to be able to have a clearinghouse, a central location for inquiries to come into, and then from that, we forward those out to either the state or to the region that they're interested in, and making a direct connection between seeing this PSA and connecting them with someone that could give them more information about becoming an EMT or paramedic in the area that they want to work in. So those are some things that we're figuring out the final details on that, but this is the packet of information from a marketing company that we had talked to about the different strategies for disseminating this public service announcement and how to get the most bang for our buck. Good thing is that we already had a lot of information because we were patterning this after a PSA that South Carolina had done. They had already been collecting data, so they knew the things that had worked well and the things that they didn't get as much information or as much feedback from. So we were kind of already a little bit ahead of the curve in going off of their successes and the things that they see that didn't work well. You'll see as you go through this packet, it shows a breakdown of exactly the different types of media, the amount of money that would be spent to each one of those different areas in dissemination of the video. Now, along with this, which is not included as part of the funding part, but this is something that the association had gotten a lot of information about, and we were being asked questions about it, and also from some information that Dr. Boone had given us. He had put me on to a guy named Charles Alexander that does an animated type video. We were wanting to discuss about the appropriate use of EMS. This public service announcement and that topic really did not mesh well together. So we pursued conversations with Mr. Alexander about doing some type of brief video, animated video that could actually be attached to emails, could go on our website, could be distributed to different places. That actually talks about the appropriate use of EMS. Now, in that, we are certainly not telling people when they should or should not call an ambulance, but again, trying to give more information on if this is going on, if you call an ambulance for this, what about this trauma that may occur, and there might not be an ambulance available for it. So that's another method that we're using to tackle some of these issues that we see, going on in EMS right now. And with that, I'll let the questions anyone has or feedback about the video and things that need to be addressed there.
Questions or comments?
Well, I'll just say, I looked at the video and I thought it was well done. My only concern was that at the end, when I finished watching it, Kim, I felt like we were promoting the association.
Okay.
And I don't really think with this entity funding that, I don't know if that's the right place to do that. So that was my concern when I saw it. Again, I think it's a good video. I think it's, well done. But again, it's just the way it came across when I watched it, that it was promoting the Georgia Association of EMS and not the EMS as a whole.
And I see your comment there, Huey. The only thing that I think that I would provide as feedback on that is that there has to be a point of contact for, and there's probably a way to incorporate some other things that are EMS generalized in that, but there has to be a point of contact where we disseminate the information to get that person that's seen this video to the right location for them to be able to pursue a career in it. So I
Sure,
think
I think that could be something as simple as, reach out to your local EMS provider, if you're interested in EMS career or something, target them in the direction of where they, or the EMS vocational schools, any of that stuff could be added to help direct people how to get into the career. But that was my thought personally.
Do you have something on your website that links to schools and stuff?
we will. We
Okay.
actually will have a page that is linked to this that will be more of a frequently asked questions page, or a place that lists different resources for them to get information.
The problem is schools come and go. And that link is going to be interesting. And if you say, get in touch with your local EMS provider, if they call somebody, they're going to say, hey, we don't teach it. We don't know exactly who to talk to at the tech school. And that will be a problem for them. So, it may be, we get funded this year, maybe it's at some point, we find some way to have a link so that if you want to go, it's like now, if you put in your zip code, it'll tell you who your legislator is. Maybe one day we have to put in your zip code, you know which schools that teach the EMT program.
Right.
And I understand your point there, Huey, that we probably can add some more information there at the end. I know that one of the things that we say we don't want to continue to have to hold people's hand, but we do a lot of hand holding. And what we're afraid of is if we don't have something to where the association is linked directly into that we'll lose these people. If you don't basically
I agree. And I think we can have the association as one of the contacts, but again, I just felt like it was promoting the association more than, I would think that maybe have something in there, contact your local EMS provider or Georgia Association of EMS for more information, or your local technical school or something. And then I think maybe there should be some kind of recognition of the funding.
And that is one of the things that actually there will be a preface page and a page at the end that will have the logos on there, and we'll actually have that on there.
We actually have a link on our website with all the additional.
Yeah, even
It's-
you can even have the state office of EMS and trauma on there.
It's linked to LMS, so it will be updated.
Yeah, so you can go to our state website, go under initial education, actually has like a interested students can go to this, and it has a type of link elements, and they can search the initial education.
Does it give addresses?
Oh, we have updated email addresses. So like if you were an interested student and you're like, all right, I want to go find this, so you can put in the credentials, you're looking for an EMT class. Then it'll give you upcoming EMT classes, who's hosting it, and their contact information. So phone number and email address.
Richard put the same thing in the comments. I'm asking him to link it and I'll pull it up so you guys can see it.
But you give a phone number and a name. Does it give a location of the school?
You could break it down into regions.
Let me tell you where I'm going with it. As part of this mapping program, I would like one day to see where the initial education programs are and the driving distance to that. So if I know the street address, but then again, at some point I know if like Southeastern, Chattahoochee Tech, maybe they have 3 different schools that do EMT programs. That makes sense. So you would need the locations of all 3 to do what I'm interested in doing.
So with that, if I'm hearing you right, would that include like Huey School they're doing and community ambulance or places like that if they're teaching EMT classes?
I would like for it to, yeah.
Yes, as long as they put in, for the, once you, if your initial education, your initial education approved program, and, you know, Huey puts in, his program puts in for an EMT class, once they put in, it's searchable and all that.
So if someone is doing, I don't know how they do it, let's just say Gwinnett Fire, they teach the programs, but it's not an open program. Is that listed there?
It's not, it's an in-house only, so they can choose when they put in the application if it's open.
It's up, this is what's on the screen for initial EMS education, so it looks like there's a link.
But Courtney, you're talking about a simple step process that somebody who wants to be a medic could go through. Not having to learn to get into LMS and do all that.
Yeah, something that they could click on.
Like if Kim and them direct them to their website, it could be there to says find a school near me.
Or it could be, you know, one of the URL things at the end of the video that they could just
That's what.
screen
Dr. was
on and
talking
just
about. There's
go to a link. But that's separate from what I'm talking about. If somebody wants to be an EMT in Emmanuel County, and Emmanuel County is funded as a trainer, we have a full-time person who does that. But if they want to take an EMT class and they live in Emmanuel County, Jenkins County, or someplace like that, Southeastern Tech does EMT programs in Vidalia. That's it. So if you're in Swainsboro wants to take that program, then you can drive about 140 miles a week to take the EMT program. So that's not an insignificant amount of extra money that you're putting in to become a medic. So I think that's definitely cost of doing business.
So would they have to create a Genesis login in order to get this information? So if I click on this link, it should.
Yeah, so you click on that link right there. And then, so we're just going to, you're actually going to, if you click on the education tab on the left side, say you're a potential EMT student, you're looking for a course. Under that select course type, you can search initial education EMT.
Okay, I think like it probably needs to be a little simpler for someone just trying to figure out how to get into the.
They put a QR code at the
Yes,
end
sir.
of the thing that finds the site. That would be fine.
Liz, if you'll go back one page, please. So scroll down right there under the, scroll down on this page that you're on under the agency lookup, select the license level, drop down. Scroll down till you see education. Here you can search for agencies or for educational programs. So right there, if you're looking for, say, an EMT program, if you'll select the EMT program, and then click I'm not a robot and search.
You lost me. I'm going to nursing school.
Yeah, I mean, people are gonna go through all that.
They're
not gonna do that.
This is my point. That is why we wanted to do a way that we actually would have some ability to keep our fingers on the pulse of it, to be able to direct these people and handhold them a little bit. through the
It's gotta be
process.
simple.
It's gotta be.
Yeah.
So-
And they don't even know what they want to be. I mean,
Yeah, they don't know.
they just want to know what the schools are. Yeah, they don't know the difference. What's the biggest repair?
Maybe there needs to be just a kind of informational thing, like about what the options are and what, I mean, let's really think through this. You could, I mean, we could probably develop something that, and the one thing is gonna be, we need identical information shared, right? Again, we don't want to have different messaging coming from professional association and regulatory association. Like, this is a real initiative.
Well, and that kind of brings up to a point that I wanted to make sure that all of you are aware of, because this is a partnership that we have gone into with the state office, the association, the trauma commission, and GAPA to basically be conducting these town hall meetings across the state. We had 2 of them now in Region 8 and Region 9, and what I want to do is I want to be able to put together a synopsis of those meetings to come back and actually provide feedback to you about what's being said from the providers in each one of these regions, where their issues are, things that they're doing different. Because I think that if we're all partnering going out, we want to listen to them. So we're going into these meetings with an agenda that, as Michael and I saw from the first meeting in Region 8, we were getting more out of just hearing some of the things that they were telling us. If you have people that are going to be engaged and will interact with you, that's the best way to get the information. So I want to be able to report that back to you once we've completed the town hall meetings. We have 2 more that are scheduled next week in Region 1 and Region 2. And we are encouraging everyone to attend. We've announced this out to the Municipal Association, Association of County Commissioners, basically all the stakeholders, so we can get a lot more feedback. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is one of the things that we're doing for our conference in October is that we partnered with the ER Nurses Association for a nursing track to be included in our conference this year. So again, we're everywhere that we can. We're putting out those olive branches, hoping that we'll all be able to get on the same page and benefit from the information that's out there. Other questions?
Thank you, Kim.
Yes, sir.
So number 6, EMS funding update. Katie, unless you've got some kind of
Courtney,
update.
real quick, and I just saw it because it was up there. When do we discuss about moving forward with the cost of doing this?
We've already moved forward with the cost of it and voted
Well, I
on
see
the
there's
budget.
now options on how much it's gonna cost to put this out there.
I mean, we budgeted a certain amount of money to go forward with it.
Yeah.
So I'm not following your question.
All right, so there's none of this is stuff that we need to find? Or we
No,
already
this
have?
is already part of the
Okay.
24
Yeah,
budget.
that's been there, done that.
Okay.
The development of the videos of the PSA itself was in FY 23, and the marketing of it with the ad agency was in FY 24.
So when Kim when they make the edits, can everybody just put their blessing on electronically? Are y'all okay with that? Because it probably need to go out before we have another meeting. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah. I'm fine with it.
Is that reasonable?
Yeah,
Because it's already,
That's how it's works.
Anybody got a question about the 22-24 funding? If we answer your question here, I'm not. Okay. EMS equipment grant, I'm still not exactly ready to bite that dog, but that dog eventually is going to have to be bit, as far as I'm concerned. Whether, I watched Trauma Commission gets some of the fireworks money. The firefighter standards and training gets some of their money. They do a competitive grant for their equipment. Little difficult to understand their thought processes, I can promise you. So I don't want to go down whatever road we go down, I won't be fairly clear. But at the same time, I want to try to look at a better way, a more effective way of allocating those dollars and more focused on what we do and what our mission is. So if anybody's got ideas, you can call me, you can bring it up, you can do whatever. But that's still something on my agenda to try to figure out. Immediate transfer to higher level of care. We have that as a project. Lee has that as a committee on MSAC that I chair. So we've done several things since the last meeting. I guess the biggest one, we had a meeting down at Cordele. We're working with the State Office of Rural Health. We had representatives from the Association of County Commissioners. Bill Toomey was there. Bill Wiley was from Georgia Hospital Association. He focuses on the rural health side of the thing. And some EMS providers, but State Office of EMS, Liz was there. So a good group. But what we didn't try to do was solve any problems that day. But what we did was listen to folks about the different barriers to immediate transfer of time-sensitive patients. We're not looking at take home from the hospitals. We're not looking at Aunt Sally, broke her foot and she really needs to go either today or tomorrow, the next day to get that looked at. We're looking at those time-sensitive patients. And we're actually, because of who we are, we're more concerned in discussing the trauma side of it. We have an agreement now with the folks at the Mercer Innovation Center, Rural Health Innovation Center. We have come up with a little bit of a draft of a questionnaire. Liz and Kelly Vaughn have been kind enough to send me some equipment lists that they have for trauma centers. So we're trying to roll two things into one questionnaire and still keep it short enough that people will answer a questionnaire, but it will involve how big of a problem you have in getting your critical patients out. And part of that questionnaire will be, can you not get them out because you don't have ambulance transportation? Can you not get them out because the tertiary center is not receiving them immediately, or some other issue that you have? All right, so we're trying to figure those things out. And as we went through the discussion, if you ask questions like that, there is a way to do that and get data back from it that's actionable. So the Mercer Center's got some folks who can help us write the questionnaire correctly. Nita Ham has got some great cooperation from centers, particularly those that she gives money to. So we think we'll get a good return on the questionnaire. So where we're at right at the moment is me fleshing that out, sending it to the Mercer folks, and let them come back with a draft of it for us to meet again and talk about that. Any questions about that before I give you your homework?
I think what I didn't really realize is that we have to figure out a way to get all the rural hospitals, like non-designated participating members, so we can push out education and make sure there's, again, that feedback loop, and the turnover so high of the staff, and and we, the meeting was at the State Office of Rural Health in Cordele, which is a lovely venue, actually. It's very high tech, and it's really in the target area of meeting the South Georgia, folks. It's your people where they are, kind of somewhat kind of, it's not really centrally located, but at least folks from the deep southern areas can get up to it. So I think we'll have more like rural South Georgia stakeholder meetings.
So Kim discussed the town hall meetings, and I went to the one in Sylvester. If you go into Sylvester, do not use your GPS. You'll end up at a peanut field on a dead end road. What?
Just your GPS coordinate.
Yeah, it might be just my GPS, but when I turned down a dirt road, I knew I was in a hell of a mess. So about a mile down the road, it ended at a fence and a peanut field. And so anyway, I did finally get to the meeting. So I went to that one. I plan to go to a couple more. Obviously I'm in Region 6. I'm gonna go to that one. Brian went to the one in Region 9. So what I need from you when you go to these meetings to ask the question, what is your barrier at your service in making the immediate transfer to a tertiary center? What's your barriers? Is it?
So ours was distance and staffing was the two overwhelming ones for us, because we have the one level 1 Memorial, which is only 48 miles or 52 miles from me, but it's 88 miles from Bacon County.
You do have a new level 3, South Georgia. How does that?
South Augusta.
That's from you, but overall, I mean, we'll
sure
see
it
in the
would help
data.
that. I'm sure it will help that region. Yes.
So that's the things that we're looking at. What I got out of the meeting in Sylvester was staffing, and wall time was an issue for some of them. Although I don't know in my mind whether wall time is an issue for that high level critical transfer. But what I got out of their point was, well, if we have that isolated leg fracture, okay, and we know that our hospital doesn't have the orthopedic capabilities, it's going to take them somewhere. So if we take them there and we get put on the wall for 4 hours which evidently is still a huge issue in Georgia, at least in listening to that group, then we're not covering our county for that length of time. So if we take that fractured leg to our rural hospital, now it's their problem. So 5-6 hours later, somebody else is taking that patient. And one of the services there was at a level 3 center, and they were saying, hey, all these folks bring them to the level 3 center, and then it becomes our problem, which is kind of, Brian, what y'all have had in the past too. So there's quite a few problems out there, and I'm not trying to solve them today, but I'm asking you, if you're a member of this subcommittee, you represent a region. Go to your region meeting, ask the question. What are your barriers in your facility, in your hospitals, in your zone to transferring patients immediately who are time sensitive to appropriate care? That's not too hard, is it? Some of them I will come to if I can, and because I just want to hear what you got to say. As far as I can, we'll try and get on the line and listen to you. Any questions about that? So March pause, we did, if you want to call it a class, I'm not sure I would actually call it a class, but we did our first one down in Cordele a few weeks ago. We did it at Office of Rural Health. We had a great turnout. We had 3 trauma surgeons there from South Georgia and 1 from North Georgia. Quite a few nurses, quite a few medics. And what we did with that course was we went through the slide set, and all the participants was given a printout of the slides and asked to make comments. Were there other things that we need to put in, or were there other points on the slides? And I'm trying to assemble that as we speak. I'm trying to get that out to the members. But we did find that in several of the stations, we didn't have all the equipment that we thought we needed. So that equipment, with the exception of 1 item, has already been ordered. Hope to get that in the next couple of weeks. It was a great session, I think. We learned quite a lot. We now have another one scheduled at the end of September in Swainsboro, which will be the next ideation, if you will, of that. And we will do a little bit more formal programs. In Cordele, what we did was set up the stations, and then we went to the stations and talked through the stations about, do we have the gear, do we have the equipment, what are the points, how do you teach? A lot of these things, some of the stations you go to, the nurses are going to have a great deal of expertise in, and the medics are not. The next station you go to, it may be just the other way around. And quite frankly, there's going to be some of the stations that the physicians or mid-levels won't have any level of expertise in. So it's a mixed bag. So trying to focus on all 3 disciplines is going to be a little bit of an issue, but we're going to get there. The one in Swainsboro in the September again, the technical college there, and it will be a good bit more formalized. This one will also be physicians in the room doing the lectures. All right. After that, we hope to get the physicians to Mercer. And Mercer has got expertise there. They're going to put that on their web platform so that the didactic portion of that will be available before they get to the class. And I'll be honest with you, I went into that thing at Cordele thinking, well, we're going to do this way we do PHTLS and TE. And I left there thinking, no, probably not. Because if you think about it for just a minute, the whole concept of this is that the nurse, the physician, and the medic, the pre-hospital and in-hospital, has got to be a team effort. The left hand has got to know what the right hand is going to be doing. It has to be a good flow. So when I visualize it, we'd have a class like that. We'd have, initially it was 5 stations, now it's down to 4. We'd have 4 stations and everybody would rotate. We'd have 20, 25 people. Well, guess what? If you go to some of these rural facilities and ask them to come up with 25 people to be in a class, it just don't happen. So the course will have to be scalable so that we can go into a small, click on Counter County again, because it's a small rural hospital. So we may send 3 instructors in there to do 5 people. in the morning, 5 people in the afternoon. They would go online and do their didactic before they got there. They would have to do the didactic, take a test, prove proficiency in it. And then once they've done that, then they could come to the practical skill set. And they would all be working together to hopefully understand each other's point of view. I think one of the big things that we got to teach the medics to do is recognize that if a hit injury, don't take it to even if it's level 3 center, they don't have neurosurgery, don't take it there. All you're gonna do is delay their long-term care. So we got to figure out how to do that. And the other piece to that is understanding their resources and understanding the needs of that local community, try to figure out how we can meet those or find somebody who can. Any questions about that? Okay. New business. Lee, they got you doing the meeting cadence.
So, excuse me. All I was going to ask is if we could move off of, is this the third Thursday? I'm not looking at my calendar. All I was going to ask is we can move off of this. I have a conflict that's now popped up, and I think we tried to figure it out by email, and it got way too complicated too fast. But I have something that I need to be somewhere else on this exact Thursday every time we have it. So I've been foregoing doing that for the last year and a half.
Thursday, not bad, the third Thursday is.
It's just this rotation, yes.
We did land on something, a suggestion.
Thank you.
Queuing was the problem at that point, so sorry, friend.
You're under the bus now, buddy.
What did I miss? Sorry.
No, we did.
We were trying to come up with a new rotation, like first or second or something like that, and it became a problem for you, I think.
We did find something that worked for all of you. We just needed to make sure it worked.
It was just a different Thursday was all I was asking.
That's fine.
You what?
We did find one,
Wednesdays.
but it's the third. Was there
There was
Wednesday?
the
Wednesdays, the third Wednesdays is when I'm out.
Yeah.
Which was
So we
yesterday.
didn't actually find something.
I was here all day yesterday.
Did we say what about the?
That's our, every month, our operational and administrative meetings.
So-
Yeah.
So the next meeting is October, so that's October 19th. So we need to potentially look at other.
If it's possible.
So we already know the third Wednesday doesn't work.
So what about the second Thursday?
The 12th?
That's October, right? Anybody got any conflict on the second Thursday on a routine basis? Going once, going twice, sold on the second Thursday of the month. Our next meeting will be October the 12th.
Thank you.
So does somebody want to make a motion to change the meeting cadence to the second Thursday at the same time, 10 a.m.?
I'll make the motions. I made the request, I guess. Can we move the meetings, please, to, or I guess I need to say it a different way. I'd like to propose we move the meetings to the second Thursday of the month at the same time going forward.
Do I have a second?
that.
All right, got a motion to second. Any discussion?
But that's Jeff. Jeff, we can't hear you if you're talking.
I'm not discussing. Y'all go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All
I was
right.
gonna take Liz to the beach every month, but I guess we'll do that.
Well, that was what you told me to do.
I've already planned to go to the beach during that time, so I'll miss out.
All right. All in favor be aye.
Yeah, great.
Get out of that.
Any opposition, please let me know that. Go ahead and put it in your calendar.
Thank y'all.
DOT signage, Jim.
All right, I wanted to bring before this committee an idea to ask every EMS agency in the state of Georgia to look at the hospital signs in their community. So I kind of researched it myself. Morgan County is awesome. A lot of other places, signs are missing. They're knocked down, they're changed because of construction. So I reached out to the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. That's Alan Poole is the director. They're 100% behind our effort to endorse this sign project. And Tim Preston with the Department of Transportation sign shop manager is ready to go. I just need to, I'd like to present that as a motion that we ask agents, all the agencies in the state of Georgia to help about signs. And the other thing we've noticed, that I noticed, you'll have a hospital, you'll come around an area, there's a hospital sign. Which way, pray tell, do you turn? So we're only asking for the there's a federal code on signs, municipal uniform traffic signs, that Georgia is a part of that. And it's the hospital sign and an arrow, left or right, so the person can find an emergency room. So I would like to make that as a motion.
I'll second that.
Any questions about that? You know, Jim, that'd be something I think we can all take to the town hall meetings also. But I think probably one of the things we need to do is get a letter or an email out to all the EMS, all the 911 agencies and say, hey, do this.
And you mentioned here, it's funny you say that. That was a major undertaking here. Our public relations person at the hospital set out because it's a new hospital that we moved, and it was quite a process to get signage. Much more harder than I thought it would have been when she inquired about doing it.
I think you going to the Governor's Office of Highway Safety was a good step, because I ran into the same challenge when I was in Macon and they got designated as level 1. It was a challenge trying to get them to put trauma center up. So, and Kennestone's done something neat, which I don't think you can do everywhere, but the ER there is in a unique triangle. So it's a little confusing, especially if you're stressed. They've actually got it painted on the street, what lane to get in and everything. So once you find it, it not only does that, it starts dropping breadcrumbs for you. Because it can be a little confusing, but it's at Kennestone. When you get within, what would you say, about 400 feet, 400 or 500 yards, something like that. Yeah.
It's hard to just find a parking deck there, let's be honest, you know.
Yeah.
Like 5.
Yeah. But it gets you to the front door of the ER real well. It really does. They did a good job with that.
Jimson would be willing, if Jim wants to get with me the kind of questions that he wants to ask, we can do a Survey Monkey link and send it out to all of our people and see if they can just link in and answer questions. And then I can forward you an Excel spreadsheet of what they're saying.
That's great.
Just,
Let's go ahead.
My email address is on our website thing. Just contact me, or I can come over there and give it to you, and we can work together and I can help you out.
Thanks.
If that's an option.
So the motion is to adopt it as a project and support it. Any other discussion? All in favor is aye. Any opposition? I did it once before, but y'all got behind me, got ahead of me. So I would declare that unanimously passed. So if you want to get with Kathy after you get and swap information, whatever we need to do to help you, let us know, Jim. Any other business that we need to take care of?
I think Richard, did you have something that you were wanting to show in response to something had come up in last meeting?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember which meeting exactly it was. There was a question from Courtney for us to evaluate the EMR curriculum to see, and I don't have it in front of me. So Courtney, if I butcher your request, I apologize. Essentially for us to look at the curriculum and evaluate to see if we could potentially lower the course hours to allow better flexibility for the Trauma Commission dollars to support the EMR and the EMT program, specifically the EMR versus a first responder. So that's what this data is in a nutshell. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So Ryan pulled this data. This does not include our high school students, which is a very large amount of the number of EMRs that take a program and test. So this does not include those, which of course is not, typically speaking, a high school program is not funded by Trauma Commission dollars. So there were 1,012 candidates during this period, 2021 to 23, that completed a course. 722 of those attempted the exam. 437 of those passed. And of the 437 that passed, 378 of those passed on their first try. Next slide, please. Here's the progression of pass rates. Obviously, 2020, 21, we were recovering from COVID. But what this displays is that from October of 2021, we were at 47% when we instituted the 80-hour requirement. And since that time period, we've increased by 10% on our first-time pass rate. And cumulatively, within our 3 attempts, we've increased by 4% from October of 2021. Next slide, please. There are 41 different programs across the state of Georgia. This is not courses. This is individual EMR programs. And again, does not include the 35 high school programs. What we looked at was the lowest number of course hours that anyone offered was 81 hours. There's a little bit of nuance there, is that they reported 81 hours, but they didn't account for the 10 hours of mandatory training, NIMS, TIMS, and congenital adrenal hyperplasia in their hours. So rather than it being 81, it would have been 91 hours. And then the highest number was 184 hours. When we aggregated all those together, the average course length for an EMTR course, or EMR course rather, is 108 hours as opposed to our required 80 hours. Next slide, please. And then what we also looked at was the success rate of the program itself based on their course hours. So you can see that the lower the hours that the program offered, they have a corresponding pass rate with it as well. And what's interesting to note about this is that the national average pass rate for EMR is at 73%. So based on our analysis of this, at the moment, we are not willing to lower the course hours from our recommended 80 hours, or excuse me, our required, not recommended, 80 hours, simply based on the fact that our pass rate has continued to go up with the institution of the 80 hours. And most of our programs, even with us setting the floor at 80 hours, most of our programs are well above that already. So it's kind of a moot point when no one is even teaching the minimum at the current moment for us to lower down any lower. And I hope that answered the question. I think that was exactly what was asked. If not, I'd be happy to provide more. Thanks for the chance to speak.
So no, that wasn't the question, but I appreciate the information. So the question was, quite frankly, I'm interested in this group funding the 50-hour DOT program that was initiated quite a few years ago. And here's a reason. So if we fund the 50 hours and they take it and the instructor says they pass, which what we used to do before we started the licensure of this level, that's a Georgia level, then the people who finished it successfully, they knew how to do CPR, they knew how to stop bleeding, and they knew those initial things that made a difference in whether somebody lived or died. And if they finished it, then they could go out there and do that. We'd give them a jump bag and they go to work. Right at the moment, if we continue, if we don't fund it like that, then it costs a significant amount more money in instructor time. And what I'm seeing there is a 40% or something in that failure rate. Did I get that right? Maybe 36% failure rate. So Richard, I don't understand. EMR is not rocket science. It's just not. And if we can't teach individuals at that level and they can't pass that exam, then either we're letting people in the course that shouldn't be there, or we're not doing a good job of instructing or something. I don't know the answer. I just know, I don't know of any industry out there who has a 40% or 36%, I think maybe that, I just wrote it down, percent failure rate on their production that stays in business. And I'm not gonna do it today because I'd like for people to think about it, but I will bring it back at the next meeting to again validate us approving of the initial DOT curriculum that was, I think, 50 hours for us to fund it. If they want to teach that in their community and they want to provide those folks and their medical director is okay with it, then I'm okay with us funding it. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I misunderstood because I don't, that doesn't, the Trauma Commission funding a non-state approved course that doesn't have anything to do with the Office of EMS.
That's clear. I agree.
Just so if it's a state approved course and it has to meet, Office of EMS requirements. So I guess I misunderstood because otherwise it doesn't have anything to do with us.
Well, it used to, because it used to, when we had the 50-hour curriculum, when we first started this program, y'all would approve that as a course, okay? And we utilize you guys pretty much as they met the requirements because you had appropriately trained instructors and that sort of thing. So to me, it was a very useful partnership. When they created the EMTR, which I was not in favor of, then that changed the dynamic altogether. So all I'm interested in doing is going back to that dynamic. If your office is interested in helping us with our quality control there, then we would certainly appreciate it. However, if you're not, my recommendation to this group at the next meeting, and they have a chance to think about it, talk around about it. If somebody wants to do the EMTR because they can use that for some of their staffing, tickled to death to do that. But if like in Emmanuel County, we're teaching our firefighters how to take care of folks. If you drive through I-16, when you drive through Oak Park, if you have a crash there, and people do, you're a long ways from my substation. But I've got firefighters there that I'd like to train to go down there and open an airway, stop bleeding, do those things that make a difference while we're trying to get an ambulance from Swainsboro or Twin City a long ways down there. And that was my whole process altogether, to put people in these communities so that they could get there quickly and do the things that make a difference so that when the medics get there, they still have a viable patient.
This is just to train first responders, not for people to work on an ambulance.
That would be just to train first responders. They have no desire to work on ambulance. Does that make sense?
Courtney, yes, sir. That was the way I understood your question, which is why I presented the data as shown to answer that question, which was that no, we will not approve an EMR course that is less than 80 hours. And there's our reason for that is because the national average pass rate is 73%. And as you can see displayed on the screen, the more hours, the more successful our programs are. Georgia has a commitment to quality pre-hospital providers. So therefore, our recommendation is that we keep it, or excuse me, I should say our requirement is that we will maintain the 80 hours. So therefore, we would not approve an EMR course for less than 80 hours. And again, that would not impact the Trauma Commission's desire if they so chose to fund programs that was not state approved. And then, of course, as you outlined, those individuals could still serve as local first responders, firefighters, et cetera. But that basically, if we're going to issue them a license that would allow them to work in a pre-hospital setting on a 911 ambulance, we are committed to the quality to ensure that they are prepared to handle that.
I'm not arguing at all if they want to work on an ambulance and you're going to give them a license, although I still I'm not in favor of an EMTR on a 911 truck, never have been. I'm fine with them getting a license and helping, just like I said at MSAC, the Governor's Workforce Commission recommended that the EMTRs be allowed to do non-emergent work as a full crew. 2 of them, as long as they're doing non-emergent, they're taking folks home from the hospital, they're taking somebody to radiation therapy or whatever, that would be an appropriate way to do business. And that would essentially free up some EMTs to work on 911 trucks. So that, I'm still looking at that, and we'll discuss it at MSAC again. But my biggest issue is that if you look at the pass rates on this, I just don't understand it. I mean, we're not teaching people to be neurosurgeons. We really are not. And your point is that the national rate is 73%. Okay, so it sucks too, you know? So we just suck a little worse. And I'm sorry about the terminology, but that's what I think. At some point in time, we need to figure out why we can't train people to do the job. So,
Courtney, can I ask Michael, and put you on the spot for a second? You made the comment about the EMTRs on 911 trucks, but is it not correct that we have very few services that have asked for the?
Yes, that's correct.
It wasn't a waiver. What did we say?
it was a waiver.
Is it a waiver?
It's a waiver.
Okay, but I mean, there's only truly a handful of services that have asked for it, right?
Yeah, I don't know the number, but
Right.
it's very minimal.
It was 4 or 5 when I looked it up. It's very minimal. Yeah.
Okay, I don't ever know who's on all these calls, and so it's not like we've got EMTRs on a tremendous number of 911 trucks in Georgia. In my understanding, I think one of y'all said at MSAC that the places that had asked for it, it was more of a contingency. If staffing got short or something, they could use them if something happened, basically. Okay. Thanks, Corey.
Any other questions?
I think Richard, it'd be nice, Richard, and you and Kathy might be able to work together on this messaging for wherever people who watch the video might land. Because if we don't streamline that and get, like, what does it mean to be a paramedic versus an EMT, and where can I go to get courses, like, easily through one click type thing, then we won't, we're gonna spend a lot of money for no yield, you know? So could you guys maybe work together on the messaging around that? I think, Richard, with your expertise and Kathy's, I think that could really go a long way. We're saying, then we say the same thing and we're consistent, you know? And of course, we can link anything from mine, so we're all on the same page.
Any other new business?
Oh, EMS equipment grant. Did you want to, you guys want to talk about your process for this year real quick?
So we're
Just an
looking
update.
at the dates we're going to do the EMS equipment grant, and with just Katie and I really doing the load of the processing, seeing it October as far as it being the application period, and then November being the payment month for the grant. If that causes any heartburn.
So how long would they have to process the grant?
Same time, month.
Yeah, between October is when we receive it, and then we'll be processing payments in November.
We want to get it off the rotation of being on our fiscal processes, because it just creates a nightmare.
When do? Go ahead.
I would like to remind you that a lot of services, I think it was brought up the last time this came up, that a lot of services have to go
Get
before their boards. to get
Commissioner approval and stuff, yeah, that's why we want to, if
So
you
it might
guys
take a little
agree,
more than a month.
we can get it out now to save the date, right, the messaging, so they can start putting their approvals through. So certainly by, like, the last day it would be like October
31st.
Yeah. So
does that give them enough time if we let them know it's happening in October? And so
Personally, it doesn't affect us, but I
Yeah.
was just speaking, I think,
no, we've had that issue
Yeah, there
before.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's sending out now saying, you know, in October, we're going to ask for this. If there's things that you need to do up front, go ahead and get your processes in place. I think that would be great.
So have we got representation from every region now? Are all the positions filled?
Yeah.
On this committee?
Yes.
Yeah, well, is your?
Yeah. John Smith.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So would there be any advantage to sending the regional reps a truck count just so if anything jumps off the page at them is odd. A month in advance of all this, or 60 days, or,
When you say the region rep, the regional rep here,
yes.
yeah.
Because I mean, we've all had discussions around,
Yeah.
do I need to call somebody? I can't remember the details,
What does
but
it take for the counts to come back from
About
county?
a full week, she gives the
Yeah.
agencies, she sends it off to the regional directors to verify the counts. Kelly does, sorry. Sends it off to the
Yeah.
regional directors to verify the counts and then submits them to me.
And therein lies my headache, because the regional directors can only tell you how many licensed ambulance that service has.
But they should know how that service operates.
Yeah, they probably do.
I mean, that would be good for them to know how many that service has. So somebody's saying I've got 15 and the state's showing they've only got 14.
Well,
Then there's that, but I would think, I mean, I don't know, man, in the two regions I'm in, our regional coordinators have a pretty good feel for how we operate and trucks. we run.
and I've talked to them and they do, but if you walk up to an ambulance and look at an ambulance, you know, it looks like an ambulance.
Are you saying, so will that impact the number of, it's like, for the application, it is what it is. So unless you make a change now, I can't wait till the counts come in and then change the, well, I guess we could because the application wouldn't have gone out yet.
I think we can go ahead and send out an email saying, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. And it may be this year we have to continue doing exactly the way we have done it. And I don't think there's many services that stress me out a whole lot. But if you are a service and you've got all your 911 trucks and you've got about twice as many non-emergent trucks that do dialysis work and that sort of thing, then we've been funding all of those trucks. And I don't think that was the intent of the grant. Sure.
Jamie, do you do a comparison of last year and this year?
That's what I sent.
Could you send, I mean, the regions are wanting to know, if you do a comparison, could you go and see it and send last year's data out to them so they can see what was done last year? That way, if you see one service has 10 more trucks this year versus last year, you can have an idea that I need to send this one out for somebody to review. That's all.
Yes, when I sent to verify the counts, I sent last year's total and then she plugs in this year's and then based on the regional director's counts as well. And then she does another column that's final.
Right. I would just say go ahead and share last year's numbers with them. That way they'll have an idea of what was wrong in their regions. And if something's drastically different, we can share that information.
And that's all on our website because all that is posted now. We post all that. So maybe they need to know that. And then maybe we should pre-schedule a call before
Yeah, that might work.
just a call, not an in-person meeting, but just to talk about the counts and see if anybody has any heartburn or anything before the application goes out.
Is that fair?
sounds like a great solution. I mean, it's a step towards what you've been trying to do.
And again, maybe I'm just splitting hairs. I don't know, but it frustrates me with some of them because of the numbers.
I mean, I know over the last 3 or 4 years, I've made a few calls within Region 5 about truck counts because there was ones that just jumped off the page at me.
Yeah. Any other business? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to go home. I got a motion, a second. Thank y'all so much for your time. I didn't have to eat my Snicker bar. That's pretty darn good.
I thought that was for me.